Buffalo Sabres, 5th last year with 91 points, but sneakily one of the best stories of the regular season. They were a spectacular watch. They were a lot of fun, and they're everything that you want in a hockey team. They're big, they're tough, and they score a ton of goals. And if they can get goaltending sorted out, I think they're set. I think they're ready to go.
I think they are set.
Now, betting odds for their points this year. They had 91 last year, 5th in the division. What do you think they have this year?
99.5.
99.5. Jesse, what do you think the betting odds are?
They had 91 last year. I'm looking at the standings. I'm going to say that it's going to be in and around that area, 93.5.
Wow, Jesse, it's 92.5.
Ah! Wow.
Yeah, surprisingly conservative. Because
really
again,
conservative.
And I think the reason
That
for
makes
that, to me, it makes sense too. And Jesse, tell me if you disagree with this, but for me, it's really easy to go from 30th in the league or 32nd in the league to 16th in the league, right?
Yeah.
It's really hard to take that next step, to go from 16th to 10th or to top 5 or to top 3. It gets harder and harder and harder incrementally. Now, the Buffalo Sabres seem like a team that can absolutely do it. And I want to start with the most obvious thing, which is their top lines. And Jeff Skinner. Jeff Skinner, who has another resurgence. Tage Thompson, Dylan Cousins, Alex Tuck. This is a really interesting team. Peyton Krebs, I want to include in there too.
I sneakily like the addition of Jordan Greenway.
Why do you like Jordan Greenway? Let's go on that.
He's friggin' huge. The Atlantic Division is going to be the nastiest division in the league this upcoming year, but he's not a guy who can just fight and hit and everything. He can bang in a few goals. He was a little down last year. I think he'll be back up.
Tage Thompson is, by all accounts, for real. I've never seen somebody that big do that much with that little space.
He has never been that for real.
No,
no one has ever been more for real.
He's been super real, the realest of real. This year, for him to take a step forward, what does that look like? 40 goals. What else do you need to know?
I mean, I don't know if he needs to do more, man. At this point, he's got to prove he can consistently do it, right? Like, there's a reason we talk about Tage Thompson so much.
47 goals, I said.
47. We were watching him going, where did this come from? I don't care if he was a first-round pick. For the first several years of his NHL career, there was no trace of this. And then he had this crazy speed. One of the most staggering and underrated one-timers in the entire NHL. He's just got to keep cranking that puck. That's it.
He went from, I remember, 2018, 2019, first year with the Sabres, 7 goals in 65 games. He played 1 game in 1920 for them, no points. 2021, 38 games, 8 goals. 21-22, 38 goals. 22-23, 47 goals.
And it was 38 goals, and I want to say almost all of them were in the back half or something. He just went, hockey, and just figured it out one day mid-season and hasn't forgotten.
Now, that has, that the rising tide floats all boats. Obviously, Jeff Skinner is back on it. How important is it to have Jeff Skinner and 4 more years at $9 million scoring at the rate that we assumed Jeff Skinner would always score at?
Well, it was an untradeable boat anchor of a contract. We're talking half retention and picks and maybe prospects to get rid of it. That was the conversation we were having with Jeff Skinner. Even if he's overpaid at $9 million, and he's not that overpaid, and in tomorrow's
NHL, next year, he won't be. If he's scoring at this rate.
And it's not a boat anchor of a deal. And also, the Sabres currently have just under $8.8 million in cap space.
It's crazy.
According to Cap Friendly. So you need your big money players to be big money, and he is.
2 straight 30-goal years, 33 and 35, which is pretty spectacular. That needs to continue. Now, Jesse, I want to ask you about this.
Yep.
Really, really important.
Yep.
One of the things that they were lacking a little bit last year, goaltending.
And that's the most fun part of the Buffalo Sabres this year. Outside of Zach Benson, who might make the team as an 18-year-old and
which is crazy,
might tear up the league just unexpectedly. It's going to be super fun to watch. But the Buffalo Sabres finished last year 3rd in goals for. Amongst the top 12 teams in goals for last season, they're the only one to not make the playoffs. In power play percentage, they were in the top 10. Amongst those 10 teams in the power play percentage, they're the only one to not make the playoffs. The only reason the Buffalo Sabres didn't make the playoffs was they allowed too many goals. And this season, they might have figured out with a dude named Devin Levi. Devin Levi might come into this league and be everything that the Buffalo Sabres need to be great, because all they need to do is stop the puck. And he's looked so good in the preseason. And if it's not Levi, it might be Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen. It might be Eric Comrie. I don't think so. But they have a good shot with Levi to finally solve the problem that they haven't been able to solve since like Ryan Miller.
Yeah.
And it's goaltending.
Yeah.
And if Levi is for real, the Sabres are so good this year.
I was looking at their cap friendly. I'm like, oh, their goalies are UPL and Eric Comrie. Huh. Well, that's going to change where I have them in the Atlantic. But I just, how do you keep Devin Levi out of the NHL when he's this good? Like,
You don't.
the only way you do it is process, because you're like, okay, goalies aren't supposed to come from like straight from college to being your team's starting goaltender. That's not supposed to happen. He should go to the AHL and develop. We've seen a cup of coffee of him at the NHL level. He was good.
Got 7 games last season, held his own.
How'd he do?
904, 294.
Pretty good.
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 It's good.
Good.
You can hang. And I think like if they just make the decision, Levi's going to be everyday starter. We're going to run the 1A, 1B tandem. Hopefully, I think they should go with Pekka Luukkonen. And if we run those two and they get this kind of goaltending, like a 9-10 would be exceptional. The team is so good.
So this is the confusion that comes in. Eric Comrie is signed for 1.8.
Mm-hmm.
Like, is it really going to be Levi and UPL?
I mean,
it could be Comrie.
lots of goalies. Hey, there's a team in their division that could desperately use a goalie for the first little bit of the season. You know, that's Eric Comrie at that number is highly tradable.
Yeah, but the thing about Comrie last year is he was a disaster. And
Yeah.
that's the only reason the Sabres weren't like
But you're not
a
giving
little
up,
bit better.
You're not giving up the playoffs just because Eric Comrie makes $1.8 million.
Exactly.
If Devin Levi is the guy, then buy Eric Comrie. We'll bury it.
You got to send him to the minors. That's what you got.
That's what you got to do, and you only really have to eat about $450,000 anyway, and that's like enough for the right arm of a second line forward. So I think you'll be all right. Now, one thing I want to say is obviously the defense. We're still waiting on the Rasmus Dahlin extension, which was rumored 4 weeks ago to be in the neighborhood of like 8 years, $10.5 million per season, which doesn't seem out of line with some of the deals when you consider that Jake Sanderson, after 1 year, got $8 million or 8.2 or whatever it is. That Rasmus Dahlin contract, established guy, dominant guy, seems like a great fit. I want to talk about him in a second, though. Owen Power, because of Rasmus Dahlin, has been a little bit overshadowed outside of Buffalo. He had 35 points last year. This guy is a spectacular top-round pick. I want to know what you hope to see from him in his rookie year, because a lot of defensemen struggle in their second year.
You mean sophomore year?
Sorry, sophomore year.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of the last time a team had 2 first overall pick defensemen on the same team, and it was 2 guys who they drafted.
Mm-hmm.
Extremely rare situation.
Well, because you have to
going
be
on in
extremely
Buffalo.
bad for extremely long.
Yes, but to be the first overall pick and a defenseman, you got to be extremely good. I have all the faith in the world in Rasmus Dahlin, but Owen Power, I think, is just scratching the surface, and he's going to get to do this in a way where he doesn't have to do everything. Like so many first overall picks, Connor Bedard, have to come in and do everything.
Yep.
And it's so much harder to do as an 18-year-old. It's even harder to do on defense. Now he's, I think, 20.
Yep.
And he's not going to have to do it all. They're going to get goal support as well. I think it probably helps if you have faith that the guy behind you can make a save. I'm expecting a big season from Owen Power.
And Rasmus Dahlin, guys. I mean, he's the obvious one. Sometimes when you're doing these, you're like, let's not talk about the obvious. But Rasmus Dahlin.
Well, there's another guy who, just like Tage Thompson, mid-season 1 year just went, oh, hockey. And like he had, 5-6 games with a goal in a row.
People were getting concerned about those first like 3-4 years in Buffalo. In the last like year and a half, he's really come into his own because you're first round pick. You're like, it shouldn't take you 3 years to develop, but sometimes it's just a little longer for players.
And
his defensive game was poor.
And they were also putting him with Rasmus Ristolainen.
They were
It was
bad.
a black hole.
They were bad as a team, and they didn't have anybody good to pair them with.
Yeah, they were. I mean, it's like what the Ducks were last year. Hard to get a read on how good a player is when the team is that bad. Matthias Samuelsson's deal, by the way, looks pretty good from this vantage point. 23 years old for like 4 or 5 more years, making $4.2 million. Now, here's what I want to ask you guys. The Atlantic Division is one of the toughest to call. And before we even started this preview, I said, God, the Atlantic Division is going to fuck me up. So where do you have the Buffalo Sabres finishing in the Atlantic Division?
So I had the Bruins third, and even despite that, the Sabres might be the team I'm most wrong on. Mm-hmm. This heavily depends on their goaltending. Second. They're going to score a shitload of goals, and if they actually get some saves,
Wow.
there you go.
Wow, bold. All right, Jesse, where do you have them?
It's not that bold. I have them second too. I think
Whoa!
this is this year's New Jersey Devils in that it's been a long rebuild, and they've collected so many great assets that they're all right there and they're ready to mature right now. This team's finishing second.
I don't think either of you are wrong. And I'll tell you the only reason I went with Buffalo at third. The only reason I went with Buffalo at third is because I still am a big believer in Ullmark and Swayman, and that's why I had Boston ranked ahead. Boston's done it before. They've been there before. This is Buffalo's coming out party, and it's going to be close. I took them at third.
Take the over.